I've been there. Switching gears to the stats coming out of Vancouver, showing a huge increase in hate crimes against East Asian people in the city. We tweeted about it yesterday. Can you just detail what the province is doing beyond, the anti-racism legislation?
You broke up for quite a bit of that question, but if I'm clear, you asked me about the increase in hate crimes, particularly towards Chinese Canadians, Asian Canadians in the Lower Mainland across BC, and what steps are we taking to address that? Is that correct, Mike? Does that capture what you said?
Yeah, sorry. Can you just explain what you are doing at the provincial level to help police investigate this crime and in terms of reaching out to the community?
Great, thank you. Well, let's start with reaching out to the community first. Of course, this is the celebration of Lunar New Year has been happening over the past number of days. Normally in British Columbia, Lunar New Year celebrations involve hundreds of thousands of people, parades in our major urban centers, celebrations throughout our communities. None of that happened this year, but we did have a new way to connect and a new way to celebrate through our computers, and I conducted several virtual Lunar New Year celebrations with representatives and people from the Chinese community right across British Columbia. In addition to that, of course, we have a COVID recovery task force that includes members from the nonprofit community, particularly Queenie Chu from Success, an outstanding nonprofit in the Lower Mainland that deals with immigrant services. Queenie raised these concerns 12 months ago, and they have continued to persist. We've seen graphic images recently in the United States. In fact, a murder taking place on our television screens, an 80-plus-year-old Asian man assaulted by a youth for no reason other than the color of his skin. That's absolutely unacceptable, and it's not just in the United States. The release of the information that you touch upon brings home for all of us in British Columbia that we as individuals and as a community have more work to do to fight racism. We will be bringing forward anti-racism legislation this year. Rashna Singh has been appointed the Parliamentary Secretary to work with the Attorney General on those issues. In addition to that, Mike Farnworth, the Solicitor General, has been reaching out to law enforcement across British Columbia to reinforce the importance of prosecuting hate crimes. We need to make sure that violence against people of color is not just treated as violence, but in fact hate crimes, which carry much stiffer penalties, more difficulty in prosecutions, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't follow through and make sure that people understand in British Columbia, if you're going to turn against people because of the color of your skin, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's the message Minister Farnworth is delivering, and I expect law enforcement to follow up on that.
Do you have a follow-up, Mike?
Yes. So in terms of prosecution, do you have special hate crimes prosecutors that liaise with the police who can't charge in this province to crack down and ensure that, these offenses actually get sentences that reflect the severity of these crimes?
I can't give you an accurate answer to that question, Mike. It's hypothetical in one sense, but absolutely practical in another. I would suggest you direct that question to the Attorney General, and the Solicitor General will be happy to answer that question.
Our next question today is from Aliza Yuzda, News 1130.
Just in regards to following up on the anti-racism legislation, what specifically are you looking for? Because again, this is an issue in many of the mandate letters. What would be in that legislation specifically that would change the lives for people of color, who are experiencing systemic racism and direct racism? Like, what would you like to see in the legislation that would have an impact, and how soon will we see that?
Well, the Rashna Singh, the Parliamentary Secretary for Anti-Racism, is working with stakeholders, working with Legislative Council drafters to prepare the legislation. I don't want to preempt that. There's a lot of work being done and a lot of work to do to get it into a final form, and I don't want to prejudge the work that Rashna is doing. It has not yet come back to Cabinet for final decision. But what I will say to communities, people of color, and other groups that feel threatened and intimidated by hate crimes and violence in British Columbia that has been made worse, I believe, by the pandemic and the frustrations that people are feeling. We're there. We're hearing your message. We're hearing the call, and we're going to take action. What inspires me is discussions I had with the Chinese community through Lunar New Year celebrations this past week about their frustration and anxiety about an increase in violence and hate speak, as well as actual actions against individuals, but a sense of comfort that more and more people are stepping up to defend people who they find themselves being attacked verbally in public places. So I think community is responding in a very positive way. And I'm always a glass half full guy, but I am confident that the vast majority of British Columbians are appalled when they see their fellow citizens behaving ignorantly, inappropriately, and violently against fellow citizens of a different color. And it's just not acceptable. We repeat that regularly. We need all people in the community to talk this way, not just in debates during election campaigns, but all the time, in workplaces, at kitchen tables, at the arena. When we can gather together, we need to talk about the society we want. An inclusive society that does not tolerate hate speak. And that involves all of us, not just politicians, not just legislation. It involves how we behave with our fellow citizens. And I'm confident British Columbians are up to that task.
Katie, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. On the issue of collecting race and ethnicity data, the Chief Coroner Lisa Lapointe has said she could start collecting that next week if she was given sort of a standardized form from the government. And Bonnie Henry has also been asked, why can't the health ministry collect more than just Indigenous data, which it does collect now, but for other racialized British Columbians? So what is the challenge? Like, why can't race and ethnicity data be collected immediately if it's a matter of a standardized form of different ethnicities that would be asked by various sectors? Why can't that be done right now?
Well, we are working on that, and these issues have been drawn to our attention as a result of the pandemic. There have been calls over time for more access to race-based data, but there are also historically been those who resist the collection of race-based data, seeing that as in itself racism. So there are a whole host of views in the community about how we manage this. We've reached out to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. We've reached out to the Human Rights Commissioner, which we reestablished after 16 years with being a province without a Human Rights Commissioner, so we can make sure that we get this right. It's not as simple as one would expect to just say we're going to start collecting data on people's private information that they may not wish to share for reasons that are known only to them. So we need to make sure that this is done in a way that's understanding of some sensitivities over time. Historically, this is information that may well not have been advantageous to individuals to be shared with government and with others in society. So it's not as cut and dried as you and I would expect it to be based on the way you phrased the question. And I'm not criticizing that. I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I've been hearing it increasingly over the past number of weeks, and that's why we've been taking these actions to bring together those who are tasked with protecting human rights, tasked with protecting privacy, to give us guidance and advice on how we can work to collect this information and make it available in appropriate situations so that we can better address racism and other challenges that are race-based in our society.
I just want to ask you again, just with regards to racism, I heard you say there that most British Columbians would be appalled. For those who are experiencing these hate incidents, hearing you say that you're talking about, prosecutions and, filing charges and all of that, I guess the question might be, what about prevention? And I know it's not, a quick fix, but what are your thoughts in terms of actually preventing some of these incidents from happening, and what can the province do there?
Well, anything to deal with prevention usually starts with education. And so we are working, the Minister of Education is working with school boards, the BC Teachers Federation, and other stakeholders in the K-12 system to see ways that we can introduce anti-racism discussions and dialogues with young people. Again, we need to make sure that we're talking about these issues all the time. Prevention starts by people stepping up when they see intolerance. And I call on all British Columbians to do that, and you know what? The vast majority will. It's that small group of people that are driven by hate and misunderstanding that lead to violence, whether it be physical or verbal, against people of color or other people in our community. And prevention starts with each of us being accountable to the people around us. And this is important for people to get their head around. It's not just government's responsibility to tell people how to behave. I think our parents started to teach us how to behave, and our challenge now is to take what we've learned over the course of our lifetime about being kind and compassionate and focused on lifting people up. We need to do that every day in our daily lives, and most people want to do that. And I think that the pandemic has also highlighted graphically that although there is pockets of hate and racism in British Columbia, there is an overwhelming desire to do something about it. And that's not just government action, that's personal action.